begin tonight in Dallas County, where detectives are investigating the death of a mother and her little boy.
Seagoville police were called to a welfare check last week when relatives couldn't get in contact with them, and officers found the mother and son both unresponsive inside their home.
Janelle Ford just spoke with some of their neighbors and joins us live in Seagoville with what she's learned.
February 9th, 2024, 6:47 a.m. LYRIC Backus takes her final selfie. 27 years old, birthday girl, radiant smile. 12 hours later, she and her 7-year-old son are found dead in their garage. The police called it carbon monoxide poisoning, an accident. But accidents don't usually happen on your birthday, and accidents don't usually leave this many questions unanswered. This is LYRIC's Instagram story from that morning. Birthday girl mode activated, she wrote. Look at that smile. Look at how alive she looks. She's getting ready for what should be the best day of her year. Her clothing boutique is thriving. Her son Deuce is healthy and happy. Everything in her life is finally clicking. But here's what nobody knew that morning. This would be her last post, ever. Let me tell you who LYRIC Backus really was, because understanding her life makes her death even more devastating. At 27, LYRIC had built something incredible from absolutely nothing. Her boutique, LYRIC's Closet, wasn't some weekend hobby. This was a legitimate business pulling in serious money every single month. She'd mastered what most entrepreneurs spend years trying to figure out. She knew how to turn her personal style into real profit. Every morning, she'd wake up in that Seagoville house with the kind of energy that made other business owners jealous. Tens of thousands of followers hung on her every word. When LYRIC said something was worth buying, they bought it, no questions asked. But what made her different from every other influencer chasing fame? She was doing all of this while raising 7-year-old Deuce completely alone. Deuce, that's what everyone called her little boy, wasn't just cute, he was magnetic. When LYRIC brought him into her content, her comment section would explode with hearts and love reactions. He was a first grader at Seagoville North Elementary. Smart kid, sweet kid. The kind of child who made teachers smile when he walked into class. The bond between them? Unbreakable doesn't even begin to cover it. LYRIC had structured her entire business schedule around Deuce's life. School pickup was sacred. Bedtime stories were non-negotiable. Weekend trips always somehow became content. But you could tell, this wasn't just business. This was pure love. She wasn't just juggling responsibilities. She'd figured out how to build wealth while being the mother she'd always wanted to be. Neighbors in Seagoville would see them together constantly. Walking to the car each morning, LYRIC's protective hand on his shoulder. Coming home from school, Deuce chattering about his day while she listened to every word. February 9th started like any other day, except better. It was LYRIC's 28th birthday. The morning routine was perfect. Getting Deuce ready for school, packing his backpack with the care only a devoted mother shows, their usual breakfast conversation, probably Deuce asking if there would be birthday cake later. Neighbors later remembered seeing them leave together around 7:30 a.m. Normal, happy, completely unaware that these were their final hours of ordinary life. LYRIC dropped Deuce at Seagoville North Elementary. Through the car window, she waved goodbye, just like thousands of other mornings. Except this time, it really was goodbye. She had business errands to handle. A successful boutique doesn't run itself. But this was her birthday, so she was probably planning to wrap things up early. Maybe pick up something special for dinner. Maybe plan a little celebration with Deuce. Her Instagram activity that morning showed pure happiness. Birthday selfies, excited captions, the kind of content that makes you smile when you see it in your feed. But what nobody realized was that each post was counting down to something terrible. By 3:15 p.m., everything still looked normal. Security footage from a gas station near their house shows LYRIC and Deuce together. She's filling up the tank. He's inside grabbing his favorite chips. They're laughing. Completely normal. A mother and son on her birthday afternoon, handling everyday tasks. They left the gas station at 3:18 p.m., drove the short distance home to their Seagoville house, the same house where LYRIC had built her empire, where Deuce had learned to ride his bike, where birthday celebrations had happened before. They arrived home around 4:01 p.m., and that's when the timeline breaks. Because after 4:01 p.m. on February 9th, LYRIC Backus, a woman whose entire livelihood depended on constant communication, went completely silent. No social media updates, no business calls, no texts to friends, no responses to customers. For 4 hours, it was as if LYRIC and Deuce had vanished from the world. By 4 p.m., Jessica, LYRIC's best friend, was getting worried. She'd been texting all afternoon about birthday plans. No response. That wasn't like LYRIC, especially not on her birthday, especially not when business was involved. By 9 p.m., family members were calling repeatedly, straight to voicemail every time. By 10 p.m., panic was setting in. You have to understand, LYRIC never missed important calls. She never went silent on her birthday. She never left people wondering where she was, especially when it came to Deuce. Her phone was her lifeline to her business, her customers, her family. Going offline for 4 hours was like a doctor ignoring emergency calls. It just didn't happen. Jessica later said she knew something was wrong by 8:30 p.m. That's when she started calling other friends, other family members. Have you heard from LYRIC? Something's not right. 11:47 p.m. Jessica makes the call that will haunt Seagoville forever. She asked police to do a welfare check at LYRIC's house. Within minutes, patrol cars are heading toward that quiet residential street. The kind of street where neighbors know each other's schedules, where unusual activity gets noticed. But what they were about to discover would shatter that peaceful community forever. Officer Martinez arrives first. Standard welfare check procedure. Knock on the front door, ring the doorbell, look for signs of life inside the house. Nothing. Check the windows, peer through the garage door window. That's when everything changed. The neighbor's security camera captures it all. First, you see the police flashlight beams moving around the house. Then you hear it, screaming. Not from inside the house, from whoever made the discovery. Dayon Loggins, who lived 2 doors down, later described what his surveillance system recorded. First, you hear the screams, then moments later, you see the first responders. Inside that garage, officers found 27-year-old LYRIC Backus and 7-year-old Deuce, both unresponsive, both gone. The scene was immediately secured with police tape. Standard protocol when any unexpected death is discovered. But this wasn't just any death. This was a successful entrepreneur and her innocent child, found dead on what should have been the happiest day of her year. Loggins described the immediate aftermath. It was just mayhem. Everybody out here crying and screaming. The cops were out here. They had taped it off. Within hours, the family had an explanation ready. Carbon monoxide poisoning. A tragic accident. But the police? They weren't ready to confirm anything. We're waiting on autopsies before confirming, was their official statement. That gap between what the family believed and what the police would confirm created space for questions. Questions that still haven't been answered. Why were they in the garage in the first place? On her birthday evening? How long had they actually been there? What happened during those 4 missing hours between arriving home and being found? Neighbor Loggins, whose 3-year-old son had played with Deuce just a week earlier, struggled with the loss. He was just out here playing with my son about a week ago. Now I got to tell my little boy how he lost his first friend. By morning, news trucks were lining the street. A success story had become a tragedy, and everyone wanted answers. Seagoville North Elementary sent letters home to parents. Counselors were brought in to help students and staff cope with losing Deuce. Flowers began appearing at the house. Social media tributes poured in. The boutique customers who had trusted LYRIC's style were now mourning her death. But amid all the grief, amid all the shock, the questions kept growing. Because the more people learned about what happened on February 9th, the less sense it made. That morning's selfie, birthday girl mode activated, now looks different, doesn't it? LYRIC had no idea she was taking her final photo. Deuce had no idea that his last day of school would really be his last day of school. By the next morning, both would be gone, found in their garage. A mother and son who should have been celebrating were instead being mourned. The police called it carbon monoxide poisoning. The family accepted that explanation, but what LYRIC posted that morning would be her final message to the world. Because in less than 12 hours, both she and Deuce would be found dead in their garage. And the questions surrounding those final hours? They're just getting started. If stories like this matter to you, real cases that deserve answers, hit that subscribe button. Because the deeper we go into this case, the more questions emerge. Cases like LYRIC and Deuce's remind us how quickly everything can change. Looking at her final social media posts, what do you notice that others might have missed? Welcome to Hot True Crime Stories. Kindly support us by subscribing to this channel and turn on the notification bell icon so you won't miss out on our most important true crime documentary. 11:47 p.m., February 9th. Jessica hangs up the phone after requesting a welfare check. She's pacing her living room, staring at her phone, hoping LYRIC will finally call back. Officer Martinez is dispatched to 847 Meadowbrook Drive. He has no idea he's about to walk into Seagoville's most devastating night, and the discovery he makes will raise more questions than it answers. 12:03 a.m. Martinez pulls up to the house. From the street, everything looks normal. Porch light is on, car in the driveway. No obvious signs of distress. Standard welfare check procedure. Knock first. Ring the doorbell. Look for any indication the residents are okay. Martinez approaches the front door, knocks loudly. Seagoville Police Department, welfare check. No response. He rings the doorbell repeatedly. Still nothing. Protocol requires checking all possible entry points and windows before requesting entry authorization. That's when Martinez walks around to the garage. 11 a.m. Officer Martinez peers through the small window in the garage door. What he sees stops him cold. Inside the garage, LYRIC's silver sedan sits motionless. The interior dome light is on, casting a pale glow through the space. In the front seats, he can make out two figures, completely still, unnaturally still. Martinez immediately radios for backup and emergency medical services. His training kicks in, but his voice carries an urgency that dispatch recognizes immediately. Need EMS and additional units at 847 Meadowbrook. Possible fatalities. 2 victims visible inside closed garage. 2 houses down, Dion Loggins is awakened by sirens. His home security system has been recording all night. What it captured will become crucial evidence in understanding the timeline. 12:12 a.m. First emergency vehicles arrive. 12:15 a.m. Fire department begins garage entry procedures. 12:18 a.m. EMS personnel enter the scene. 12:20 a.m. The screams begin. Loggins later described what his cameras picked up. First you hear the screams. Then moments later you see more first responders coming. But those screams weren't from LYRIC and Deuce. They were from the emergency workers who confirmed what Martinez had feared. Both victims were already gone. Fire Captain Rodriguez was first to enter the garage after forcing the door. What he found contradicted several assumptions about carbon monoxide deaths. LYRIC was in the driver's seat, seatbelt fastened. Deuce was in the front passenger seat, also buckled in. Both appeared peaceful, as if they'd simply fallen asleep. But the physical evidence told a more complex story. The car's engine was completely cold, not warm, not recently running. Cold. Keys were in the ignition, turned to the off position. The gas tank was nearly full, ruling out the possibility that the engine had simply run until it died. Most importantly, the garage reeked of exhaust fumes, despite the cold engine. Captain Rodriguez immediately noticed something that puzzled him. The garage had 3 possible exits. The main garage door, locked from inside but with accessible manual release. A side door leading directly outside, unlocked. A door connecting to the main house, unlocked. In carbon monoxide emergencies, victims typically attempt to escape as symptoms worsen. They feel confused, nauseous, desperate for fresh air. Yet both LYRIC and Deuce remained seated in the car, seatbelts fastened. No evidence they had attempted to leave the vehicle, no signs of struggle or distress, no indication they'd tried to open the garage doors. The manual garage door release, a bright red handle hanging just feet from the car, showed no signs of being touched. One of the first questions investigators asked, where were their phones? In 2024, phones are lifelines, especially for someone like LYRIC, whose business and social connections ran through her device. If you're feeling symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning, headaches, confusion, nausea, your first instinct is to call for help. But both phones were found inside the house, on the kitchen counter, not in the garage, not in the car. This detail bothered investigators immediately. Why would Lyric and Deuce go into the garage, start the car, and leave their phones inside? Phone records later showed both devices had been stationary in the house since approximately 5:30 p.m., nearly 6 hours before they were found. By 1 a.m., investigators were interviewing neighbors. Dion Loggins provided the most detailed account. "I heard the screams around 12:20, he told Detective Williams. "That's when I knew something terrible had happened." But Loggins also provided information about earlier that evening. "I got home from work around 7:30 p.m. Lyric's car was in the driveway, same as always. But I never heard a car running, never heard any engine noise from the garage." Mrs. Rodriguez across the street confirmed similar observations. "I was watching TV until about 11 p.m. My living room window faces their driveway. Never heard an engine running. The neighborhood was completely quiet." These statements created a timeline problem. When exactly was the car running? By 12:30 a.m., Meadowbrook Drive was flooded with emergency vehicles, fire department, EMS, police, detective units, the coroner's office. Neighbors emerged from their houses to witness the chaos. Many later described the scene as surreal. "It was just mayhem," Loggins said. "Everybody out here crying and screaming. The cops were out here. They had taped it off." Word spread quickly through Seagoville's tight community. Text messages, phone calls, social media posts. By dawn, everyone in town knew that Lyric and Deuce were gone. But the circumstances of their deaths were already generating questions that officials weren't ready to answer. Detective Williams arrived at 1:15 a.m. to take charge of the scene. His first assessment was cautious and methodical. Any unexpected death requires thorough investigation until proven otherwise. The garage was immediately sealed as a potential crime scene. Evidence markers were placed. Photographs were taken from every angle. Williams noted several details in his initial report. No signs of forced entry anywhere in the house, no evidence of struggle or violence, no suicide note or indication of intent. Car positioned normally in garage bay, all doors accessible and unlocked. But he also noted inconsistencies. Cold engine, despite exhaust smell, phones located away from victims. No attempt to use available exits. Neighbors heard no engine noise. These contradictions meant the investigation would continue beyond a simple accident ruling. By 2:01 a.m., family members were arriving at the scene. Lyric's sister, Michelle, was among the first to speak with investigators. Her explanation was immediate and definitive. It had to be carbon monoxide poisoning. There's no other explanation. This certainty struck Detective Williams as both understandable and premature. Families often grasp for explanations that make sense in their grief, but investigations require evidence, not assumptions. Michelle later told reporters, "She must have started the car to warm it up for some reason. Maybe to get something from the trunk. Maybe Deuce wanted to listen to music. It was just a terrible accident." But Williams knew the evidence didn't support the warming up the car theory. It was February in Texas, hardly cold enough to warrant that action. At 3:45 a.m., Dr. Patricia Chen from the Dallas County Medical Examiner's office arrived to examine the scene. Her job was to determine cause and manner of death through scientific analysis, not speculation. Chen's initial observations aligned with the inconsistencies already noted. Victims appeared peaceful, suggesting gradual unconsciousness. No defensive wounds or signs of struggle. Positioning consistent with voluntary seating. No obvious trauma or violence. But she also noted details that would require laboratory analysis. Exact carbon monoxide levels in blood samples. Time of death estimation based on body temperature. Toxicology screening for other substances. Examination of the vehicle's exhaust system. Preliminary observations suggest carbon monoxide exposure, Chen told Detective Williams. But the timeline and circumstances require thorough investigation. By 6:00 a.m. on February 10th, the initial scene processing was complete. The garage had been photographed, measured, and documented from every angle. Evidence collected included air samples from the garage vehicle inspection data, position measurements of all objects, video documentation of the scene, witness statement recordings. The car was towed for mechanical inspection. The garage was sealed pending further investigation. But even as the emergency vehicles departed, questions lingered in the community. Detective Williams knew this case would require more than standard protocols. The combination of a high-profile victim, unexplained circumstances, and community attention meant every detail would be scrutinized. Dawn broke over Meadowbrook Drive on February 10th, revealing a changed neighborhood. Yellow police tape still surrounded 847 Meadowbrook. Flowers had already begun appearing on the front lawn. The official cause of death wouldn't be determined for weeks. But the discovery that shattered Seagoville had already raised questions that wouldn't be easily answered. Why were both phones found inside the house? When exactly was the car running? Why didn't they use any of the available exits? How long had they actually been in the garage? Officer Martinez, who made the initial discovery, would later say the scene haunted him. In 20 years of police work, I've seen accidents. I've seen suicides. I've seen murders. This was different. Nothing about it made complete sense. The investigation was just beginning. Cases that get buried deserve to be remembered. Subscribe to ensure stories like LYRIC and Deuce's don't get forgotten. Because what we found in the official investigation will surprise you. Why do you think police immediately treated this as a potential crime scene? March 1st, 2024, the Dallas County Medical Examiner releases the official ruling. Accidental death by carbon monoxide poisoning, case closed. But in Seagoville, the conversations are just beginning. Because when you strip away the official language and examine what actually happened on February 9th, the pieces don't fit together the way they should. And the people who knew LYRIC best aren't buying the simple accident story. Sandra Martinez had worked with LYRIC for 2 years, handling inventory and shipping for LYRIC's closet. She knew LYRIC's routines better than almost anyone. That whole garage thing never made sense to me, Sandra told local reporters. LYRIC never hung out in the garage. Ever. That was storage space for business inventory, not a place to sit with your kid. Sandra's observations raised uncomfortable questions about the official timeline. She always parked in the driveway and came straight inside. Always. Even when she was carrying multiple shopping bags, she'd make 2 trips rather than pull into the garage. Why would LYRIC break her established pattern on her birthday? Sandra also questioned the timing. If she got home at 4 p.m., why would she be sitting in a car with Deuce at 16 or 17 p.m.? That kid had homework. She had business calls to return. Nothing about that makes sense. LYRIC's boutique customers formed a tight community. Many had been following her for years, buying regularly, interacting constantly. Maya Johnson placed an order on February 8th. I needed to confirm pickup details for Friday. LYRIC always responded within hours. When she didn't answer by Friday afternoon, I knew something was wrong. The customer communications painted a picture of someone who never went offline unexpectedly. She'd post if she was taking a day off. She'd set up auto replies if she couldn't respond immediately. She treated her customers like family, never left them hanging. Yet on her birthday, dozens of customer messages went unanswered. Order confirmations sat pending. Business inquiries were ignored. This wasn't vacation behavior. This wasn't planned offline time. Something had disrupted LYRIC's normal patterns hours before the official time of death. Local true crime enthusiasts began creating their own timeline reconstructions, comparing official statements with witness accounts. The inconsistencies were glaring. Official, deaths occurred 6 or 8 p.m. Reality, no one heard car engines during this time frame. Official, accidental CO exposure from running vehicle. Reality, car engine was cold when discovered at midnight. Official, victims remained in car until unconsciousness. Reality, multiple unlocked exits were available, but unused social media groups dedicated to the case began asking pointed questions. How do you accidentally die from CO without anyone hearing the car running? Why leave your phones inside if you're just going to the garage briefly? What takes a mother and 7-year-old to a closed garage on a birthday evening? One detail particularly bothered investigators who spoke off the record. The garage door was found locked from the inside, but garage doors don't typically get locked unless someone intends to stay inside for an extended period. Mrs. Rodriguez, the neighbor across the street, provided crucial context. That garage door was almost always open when LYRIC was home. She used it as workspace for her business. Inventory boxes, shipping supplies, photography setup for product photos. Seeing it close that Friday was unusual, but I figured maybe she was doing a big inventory reorganization or something. The closed and locked garage suggested intentional privacy or security, not accidental circumstances. Detective Williams never publicly addressed one of the most puzzling pieces of evidence: phone locations. Both LYRIC's and Deuce's phones were found on the kitchen counter inside the house. Digital forensics showed both devices had been stationary in that location since approximately 5:30 p.m. This created multiple problems for the accident theory. If they went to the garage briefly, why leave phones behind? If they intended to return quickly, why not carry phones? If they felt CO symptoms developing, why not call for help? The phone evidence suggested either they planned to be in the garage for an extended period, someone else placed the phones inside before the garage incident. The garage visit wasn't spontaneous but planned. None of these possibilities aligned with the accidental death ruling. Jessica, Lyric's best friend, conducted her own analysis of Lyric's final day based on their text conversations. Morning texts, 7:09 a.m. Normal birthday excitement, planning celebration. Afternoon texts, 12:03 p.m. Business focused, handling customer inquiries. Final text, 3:45 p.m. Picking up my co-pilot, then we're celebrating tonight. The progression showed normal patterns until the abrupt cutoff at 3:45 p.m. But Jessica noticed something else. Lyric had made specific plans for birthday dinner. We were supposed to meet at 7 p.m. at that Mexican place she loved. She'd been talking about it all week. Why would she be sitting in her garage at 7 p.m. when she had dinner plans? This detail hadn't appeared in police reports or media coverage. Digital investigators examined Lyric's social media patterns in the weeks before her death. Her posting schedule was remarkably consistent. Morning motivation posts, 7:08 a.m. Business content, 10 a.m. to p.m. Personal family content, 6 p.m. Evening engagement, 8 10 p.m. February 9th, followed this pattern perfectly until 3:45 p.m. Then complete silence. More telling. Lyric had scheduled business posts for February 10th and 11th. Someone planning self-harm doesn't typically schedule future social media content. Her final Instagram story showed Deuce in the car with snacks, captioned, "My co-pilot ready for birthday adventures." The content suggested anticipation of evening activities, not preparation for spending hours in a garage. Dr. Michael Stevens, a carbon monoxide safety expert, reviewed the case details at the request of local media. His analysis raised additional questions. Standard CO poisoning in garage scenarios follow predictable patterns. Victims typically attempt escape once symptoms begin. The peaceful positioning described in this case is unusual. Stevens also questioned the timeline. For fatal CO levels to accumulate, you need sustained emission in an enclosed space. The neighbor testimony suggests no prolonged engine operation during the critical time frame. His conclusion: the CO poisoning is confirmed by autopsy, but the circumstances that created those conditions remain unexplained. Regardless of unanswered questions, the tragedy sparked important safety initiatives in Seagoville. Fire Chief Rodriguez organized community education sessions. Install CO detectors in every home, especially near attached garages. Never run vehicles in enclosed spaces, even for brief periods. Recognize early CO symptoms: headache, dizziness, nausea. If you suspect CO exposure, leave immediately and call 911. Hardware store owner Tom Wilson reported a 300% increase in CO detector sales. People are scared. They want to protect their families. That's understandable and appropriate. The safety response was valuable, even if it couldn't explain what happened to Lyric and Deuce. Detective Williams later acknowledged the investigation's constraints in an off-the-record conversation. "We follow evidence, not speculation. The autopsy confirmed CO poisoning, no signs of violence or restraint, no suicide indicators. By elimination, that leaves accident. But Williams also admitted the timeline issues. Did everything add up perfectly? No, but perfect clarity isn't required for case resolution. Sometimes accidents have unexplained elements. This pragmatic approach satisfied legal requirements, but left many questions unanswered. The investigation focused on determining cause and manner of death, not reconstructing every detail of the circumstances. March 15th. Memorial services for LYRIC and Deuce brought hundreds to Eternal Rest Funeral Home in DeSoto. The service celebrated their lives while acknowledging the tragedy's impact on Seagoville's community. Pastor Williams spoke about the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing every moment. LYRIC's customers and followers shared memories of her generosity and business mentorship. Deuce's classmates created artwork and letters remembering their friend. But even during the memorial, conversations included whispered questions about the circumstances. Official case status, closed, official cause, accidental carbon monoxide poisoning, official investigation, complete. Community questions, ongoing. The gap between official conclusions and public understanding reflects the limitations of both legal investigations and human curiosity. Investigations determine what can be proven legally. Communities want to understand what actually happened. These aren't always the same thing. The questions that won't go away aren't conspiracy theories or unfounded speculation. They're legitimate concerns about timeline inconsistencies, behavioral patterns, and physical evidence that doesn't align perfectly with the official explanation. Maybe those questions will eventually find answers. Maybe they won't. But asking them honors LYRIC and Deuce's memory by demanding that their deaths be fully understood, not just legally categorized. Unanswered questions in cases like this matter. If you believe in seeking truth, subscribe, comment, and help us keep investigating. Because the safety lessons from this tragedy extend beyond CO detection. They include the importance of thorough investigations that address all evidence. What detail about this case bothers you the most? February 9th, 2025, 1 year later. The Memorial Garden at Seagoville North Elementary is filled with fresh flowers. Parents and former classmates gather to remember Deuce. At Eternal Rest Funeral Home, a small group holds a remembrance ceremony for LYRIC. Time hasn't erased the questions, but it has clarified what matters most. Not the timeline gaps or investigation controversies, not the debates about thoroughness or the speculation about circumstances. What matters is how we honor the lives lost and prevent future tragedies. Before February 9th, 2024, LYRIC Backus was known as a successful boutique owner and social media influencer. After that date, she became something more, a symbol of what single mothers can achieve against overwhelming odds. Her business model inspired dozens of women to start their own ventures. Her social media content became case studies in authentic marketing. Her customer service approach set standards others tried to replicate. Sandra Martinez's Clear Air Coalition wasn't the only organization born from LYRIC's memory. LYRIC's Legacy Fund was established to provide microloans to single mothers starting businesses. Within 1 year, it had helped 23 women launch their own enterprises. Recipients reported that the fund did more than provide capital. It validated their dreams the way LYRIC had validated her customers' confidence. Tasha Williams, who received mentorship from LYRIC years earlier, now runs a successful consulting firm. Everything I know about business, I learned from watching LYRIC. She proved that you don't need a fancy degree or rich family. You need work ethic and genuine care for your customers. A 7-year-old doesn't typically leave a lasting legacy, but Deuce's curiosity and kindness created ripples that extended far beyond his short life. Mrs. Patterson, his first-grade teacher, changed her entire teaching approach after losing him. Deuce reminded me why I became a teacher. His endless questions weren't interruptions, they were opportunities. Now I encourage every student to ask why, as many times as Deuce did. The Memorial Garden became a learning space. Science classes studied the plants. Math lessons incorporated measurements from the garden layout. Art projects drew inspiration from its design. Principal Johnson observed, "We turned grief into education." That's what Deuce would have wanted, turning every experience into a learning opportunity. Former classmates, now older, still talk about their friend. Emma, who had been his desk partner, wrote an essay in 3rd grade. "Deuce taught me that being nice is more important than being cool. I try to be nice like he was." The most tangible legacy came through policy changes and safety improvements. Texas State Representative Martinez introduced the LYRIC and Deuce Act in January 2025, requiring CO detectors in all residential properties, annual vehicle emissions testing, public awareness campaigns about CO dangers, enhanced training for first responders on CO incidents. The bill passed with bipartisan support in March 2025. Representative Martinez explained, "These reforms won't bring LYRIC and Deuce back, but they'll prevent other families from experiencing similar loss. That's how we honor their memory." Seagoville became a model community for CO safety. Other cities requested information about their detector distribution program, community education workshops, and building code updates. Fire Chief Rodriguez reported 0 CO-related incidents in Seagoville during 2024, the first year without such incidents in over a decade. LYRIC's Instagram page evolved into a living memorial. Her followers, now numbering over 300,000, maintained active engagement. They shared business tips, supported each other's ventures, celebrated milestones. The community she built didn't disappear with her death. It transformed into something deeper. Weekly LYRIC legacy posts featured women who applied her business principles successfully. Monthly challenges encouraged followers to support small businesses run by single mothers. Maya Johnson, the customer who had traveled from Houston for the funeral, now moderates the memorial page. LYRIC would have loved seeing her community continue without her. She always said it wasn't about her. It was about lifting each other up. The digital space provided something the physical world couldn't, a place where LYRIC's presence felt ongoing rather than ended. Michelle, LYRIC's sister, spent the year processing loss while managing her sister's estate and legacy. She established strict boundaries about public discussion. "My sister and nephew deserve privacy in death, even if they were public in life. I won't speculate about circumstances. I focus on celebrating who they were." This stance sometimes conflicted with community members who wanted continued investigation, but Michelle remained firm. Closure doesn't require perfect understanding. It requires acceptance that some questions won't be answered this side of heaven. Michelle channeled her grief into raising awareness about single mothers' challenges. LYRIC did everything alone, raised Deuce alone, built her business alone. That shouldn't be so hard. We need better support systems for single parents. Her advocacy work honored LYRIC's memory while addressing systemic issues that made her sister's life unnecessarily difficult. Meadowbrook Drive was renovated and rented to a new family in August 2024. The new tenants, the Martinez family, knew the property's history, but chose it anyway. "We wanted to bring life back to a place that experienced death," Mrs. Martinez explained. "Our children play in the yard. We've installed 5 CO detectors. We're making it a home again." Neighbors initially struggled with seeing new faces at the property, but over time, the presence of children playing and families living helped the street heal. Mrs. Chart Rodriguez across the street reflected, "For months, that empty house felt like a wound. Seeing it occupied again, seeing life continue, that helped all of us move forward." The neighborhood established an annual CO safety check day, where residents test each other's detectors and share safety updates. Tragedy had transformed Meadowbrook Drive from a place where people simply lived into a community that actively looked out for each other. 1 year later, the timeline inconsistencies and unexplained circumstances remained. No new evidence emerged. No additional investigation occurred. The official ruling stood unchanged, but the community's relationship with those unanswered questions had evolved. Detective Williams, now retired, offered perspective. "Some cases have perfect clarity, others don't. That's the nature of death investigations. We work with available evidence, not wished-for evidence." Dr. Chen, the medical examiner, echoed this sentiment. "Science confirmed carbon monoxide poisoning. That's what we can prove. The exact sequence of events leading to that exposure may never be fully reconstructed." Community members who had demanded additional investigation largely accepted this reality. Sandra Martinez, "I wanted every detail explained. I wanted perfect understanding. But I've learned that honoring LYRIC means focusing on her life and legacy, not obsessing over unexplainable circumstances of her death." The Backus tragedy taught Seagoville and communities following the story several crucial lessons. Carbon monoxide is preventable, but requires vigilance. Detectors save lives. Regular vehicle maintenance matters. Awareness of symptoms is crucial. Death investigations have limitations. Police resources are finite. Perfect understanding isn't always achievable. Legal closure and emotional satisfaction are different things. Communities heal through action. Memorial spaces provide comfort. Safety reforms honor the dead. Advocacy transforms grief into purpose. Legacy isn't determined by how you die, but by how you lived. LYRIC's entrepreneurial success and generosity defined her. Deuce's curiosity and kindness defined him. These lessons extended beyond Segoville. News outlets revisited the case on its anniversary, highlighting the safety reforms and community response rather than the unexplained circumstances. February 9th will always be a difficult date for those who knew LYRIC and Deuce. But it's also become a day of remembrance, advocacy, and renewed commitment to safety. Jessica visits LYRIC's grave every year on that date. I tell her about the women her legacy fund helped, about the businesses launched using her methods, about how her community is still thriving. Deuce's classmates, now third graders, still visit his memorial garden. They've adopted it as their responsibility, maintaining it through changing seasons. Mrs. Patterson observed, "These children understand death in a way most kids their age don't. They've learned that people we love can be taken suddenly. But they've also learned that love doesn't end when life does." The memorial service on the one-year anniversary drew hundreds again. The community that had gathered in shock and grief now gathered in remembrance and resolve. LYRIC Backus spent 27 years building a life of purpose and impact. She created a business that empowered women. She raised a son who brought joy to everyone who knew him. She inspired thousands through her authenticity and work ethic. Deuce Backus spent 7 years being curious, kind, and loved. He asked questions that made teachers think. He shared snacks with classmates. He made his mother proud every single day. Their deaths on February 9th, 2024 were tragic, sudden, and filled with unexplained circumstances. But their lives, the 27 years and 7 years they spent making the world better, those are what we choose to remember. The questions about that night may never be fully answered. The timeline gaps may remain mysterious. The circumstances may stay partially unexplained. But the legacy they left, the businesses launched, the children inspired, the safety reforms enacted, the community strengthened, that's crystal clear. That's the story that matters. Not how they died, but how they lived and how their lives continue to impact others. If you found value in understanding this case and want to stay informed about similar stories that honor victims while seeking truth, consider subscribing. Cases like LYRIC and Deuce's remind us to hold our loved ones close, prioritize safety, and remember that every life, no matter how long or short, leaves ripples that extend far beyond what we can measure. Check your CO detectors. Tell your family you love them. Support single mothers trying to build better lives. That's how we honor LYRIC and Deuce Backus. How do you think LYRIC and Deuce would want to be remembered? Thank you for watching to the end, and I will see you on the next episode of Hot True Crime Stories. Stay safe.